Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. However, Hui Yuhao suddenly had a strange feeling at this moment. He was stunned to realize that the aura of the yin-yang love-querying valley seemed to have experienced some form of transformation. The direct benefit of this transformation was that he could now connect to his spectral demiplane. This meant that he could use the strength left behind by Electrolux if he had no choice. At the same time, he could also. Hui Yuhao grabbed Wang Dong's hand and recited an incantation. A light flashed, and both of them vanished. In the next moment, a cold and sinister world was right in front of them, Hui Yuhao's spectral demiplane. The spectral demiplane created by Electrolux was indeed extraordinary. Hui Yuhao immediately sensed that the love-querying valley's control of him had disappeared the moment he stepped into this demiplane. This meant that he shouldn't be affected by the valley here. However, it was a pity that he was even here at all. Hui Yuhao sighed. The love-querying valley is too cunning. My mission is to save eldest and third senior, and thus some of the restraints I was under have also been released. It was true that he wouldn't be affected by the power of the valley in this spectral demiplane. However, could he really forsake Bei Bei and Shusansha and escape with Wang Dong? It was obviously not a practical choice. You're finally here. I thought that you were still a cheat, a resentful voice called out. A yellow figure flashed up, and the angry Yi Gai appeared in front of them. She was enraged. When Hui Yuhao defeated her with his abilities, she was already half convinced by what he said. After that, Hui Yuhao's power brought her to this place, where undead were all around. She didn't know how he did it, but the undead didn't get close to her. However, the aura in this spectral demiplane was too uncomfortable and irksome for her, since she had the holy angel martial soul. When Hui Yuhao left, he left for a long time. Yi Gai was tempted to kill the undead on more than one occasion to vent her disgust towards this world she was in. However, she knew that the undead here were different. These undead were filled with the aura of light, wouldn't give her any strength, or strengthen her martial soul. Furthermore, there was an army of them. No matter how self-confident she was, she couldn't possibly clash with them directly. After waiting for such a long time, Hui Yuhao was finally here. Naturally, she was angry with him. Hui Yuhao was apologetic as he said, "I'm sorry, Yi Gai. We've met with a bit of a special situation. I'll bring you out now. However, we'll need your help when we get out. Our friends are trapped in Radiant City. We need to rescue them." Yi Gai snorted coldly. "Why should I help you? You are a disgusting evil soul master. I'm still not even clear about who you are." Hui Yuhao was a little helpless as he answered, "Up to you. Anyway, I'm mainly here because I have to release you. If you don't want to help us, you can leave as soon as you're out. It's very dangerous outside. Come on." As he spoke, he lifted his right hand and recited another incantation. A strange layer of grayish light engulfed the three of them. Although Yi Gai revealed a disgusted look on her face, she didn't try to avoid it. In addition, she started glancing in Wang Dong's direction. Wang Dong was dressed in a white warrior robe, which perfectly accentuated her petite figure. Although her figure seemed a little less mature than Wang Qiu's, she had a more youthful aura. Her powder blue hair flowed behind her head, and her big, beautiful eyes seemed like the prettiest gems in the world. As she grinned, Yi Gai was dazed, even though she had always been one who was confident in her ravishing looks. However, she didn't remain in a daze for too long. Very soon, they vanished in a patch of distorted light. Yi Gai was jolted awake by the aura of necromancy. These undulations, which sickened and disgusted her, lasted for a minute or so, until they were finally brought back to the familiar world. It was nighttime here as well, but the sky above Radiant City was empty. The huge buildings emitted all sorts of lights. Even though they were still some distance away, they could still easily make out where they were. Hui Yuhao was rushing to rescue Bei Bei and Shusansha, and thus he couldn't be bothered with Yi Gai. He quickly pulled Wang Dong as he charged in the direction of Radiant City. "Hey! You haven't explained things to me." Yi Gai's figure flashed, and she pursued the two of them before intercepting Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao turned grim as he said, "Move away. I need to rescue some people. If you dare to block me, you'll be my enemy. Although I think your holy angel will be very useful to deal with evil soul masters, I won't hesitate to turn you into a specter, either. Get lost. As he spoke, Hu Yuhao's eyes shone with golden light, and his immense spiritual power surged towards Yi Gai. You, why are you so fierce? Yi Gai was shocked. After all, Hu Yuhao had defeated her once, and left a deep impression on her mind. As she saw how serious and assertive he was right now, she couldn't help but feel a little afraid. Hu Yuhao ignored and ran around her, as he continued to pull Wang Donga along with him. His speed soared as he burst towards Radiant City. Yi Gai stomped her feet in indignation as she watched them leave. However, she still followed them. Hey! Wait for me. I'll help you rescue your friends. However, you must tell me what's going on with your evil soul master abilities after we rescue them. Wang Donga chortled and shot a flirtatious glance at Hu Yuhao before saying, loosening up to get her under your control. You sure have a way with chasing girls. Hu Yuhao snapped, we are in such a rush now, but you still have the mood to crack jokes. Help me. As he spoke, his armor flipped up, revealing his left hand. Their Haodong power started to circulate through their bodies via the hand that was holding on to Wang Donga. Hu Yuhao's eyes also became brighter. His vigorous spiritual power shot forward like a sharp sword. At this point, Hu Yuhao didn't bother hiding his spiritual cultivation anymore. His spiritual strength had reached an extremely high level, and his spiritual power changed into a beam of invisible spiritual light that shot into the distance to observe his surroundings. As he turned his head, he started to scan around. Yi Gai felt the vigorous spiritual power from Hu Yuhao wash past her, and was horrified. The demand on her own spiritual power to use her holy angel was also very high. This was because her holy angel didn't just rely on the power of light to become stronger, it also relied on the power of belief, as well as the power of purification that was obtained from purifying evil. All these required immense spiritual power to control. As a result, Yi Gai had always been very confident in her spiritual power. However, she now discovered that her spiritual power couldn't compare to Hu Yuhao. His cultivation is obviously only around 6 rings, but the strength of his spiritual power seems to be boundless and unpredictable. His terrifying spiritual suppression can even exceed that of a titled Doluo. After his quick scan, Hu Yuhao didn't find Bei Bei and Shu Sanxi's auras. However, he discovered a large number of the Sun Moon Empire's troops. They were all deployed to the west of Radiant City and encircling it secretly. There were also several soul engineers equipped with soul tools among these troops. They were moving in an orderly manner, and it was obvious that they were prepared to react to any kind of situation. Hu Yuhao took in a deep breath and slowly shut his shining golden eyes. A strange glow began to shine on his forehead. His eye of destiny opened silently, and a purplish golden light shot out from it. As he fully unleashed his spiritual power, Hu Yuhao also finally revealed one of his soul rings that he usually concealed with his imitation. White, purple, purple, black, black. His 5 soul rings appeared around him. Yes, these were the true colors of Hu Yuhao's soul rings. The words that the Sky Dream Iceworm told him before weren't exaggerated. His spirit eyes were able to become so strong because his soul rings evolved as his spiritual power increased, and later, after he fused with the Sky Dream Iceworm's spiritual origin. His first soul ring was a 10-year soul ring, his second and third rings were 1,000-year soul rings, and his fourth and fifth soul rings were 10,000-year soul rings. Among soul masters of the same rank, he was unique. Furthermore, his second and third soul rings might even evolve to 10,000-year soul rings, as his spiritual power continued to increase. Yi Gai was shocked when she saw his 5 soul rings. What's going on? 10-year, 1,000-year, 1,000-year, 10,000-year, 10,000-year. Is he normal? Aren't his soul rings supposed to be grayish? Why are they like that now? Which ones are real, and which ones are fake? He's only a soul king, but he defeated me even though I'm a soul emperor. This completely contradicted everything Yi Gai knew about soul masters. Suddenly, she became very curious about Hu Yuhao. Hu Yuhao's Eye of Destiny spiritual detection could cover more than 7 kilometers, if aimed in a single direction. It was the best that he could manage right now. As he scanned the area with his spiritual detection, he sensed everything that was happening within the region he scanned. Finally, he revealed a delighted look on his face. I've found them. Let's go. Yi Gai, follow us. Stay no more than 10 meters away from us. Yi Gai wanted to retort, but Hu Yuhao had already pulled Wang Donga along with him as he charged forward. In addition, Wang Donga's body lit up with 1 yellow, 3 purple, and 2 black soul rings. They were better than what was normally the best combination possible. Her bluish-gold butterfly wings opened up on her back, and a captivating glow rendered her even more ravishing. HMPH. I'm not inferior to her. Yi Gai unleashed her holy angel following the rise in her competitive spirit. While she was drained in her fight with Hu Yuhao, she had completely recovered when she was in the spectral demiplane. The place was filled with a spectral aura, but there was also a dense aura of light. However, it didn't help her recover her soul power. As she opened her 4 angel wings, Yi Gai fluttered her feathery wings and chased after Hu Yuhao. There were white wings on one side, and bluish-gold wings on the other side. The 3 of them definitely formed a very dazzling lineup. The Sun Moon Empire's troops were already watching them from afar. Hu Yuhao lifted his head to peer into the sky. With his vision, he had already located a few surveillance soul tools in the sky. A cold smile appeared on his lips. While these surveillance soul tools were effective against most people, they might not be effective against him. A strange layer of spiritual undulations rippled from his body. Yi Gai only saw his first, white soul ring shining before the light around them started to bend. She was also inside, and thus she couldn't see what changes were happening to her body. The only feeling that she got was that the light that both she and Wang Donga emitted dimmed down before it disappeared. Their surroundings also turned pitch black. However, she could still see the bluish gold from Wang Donga's wings. She became very curious as she witnessed this strange scene occurring. However, she was astonished at the next moment. Hu Yuhao's gentle spiritual power was transmitted over. As she thought he was trying to connect with her, she naturally accepted his spiritual power. However, Yi Gai opened her eyes wide in shock following this. Everything around her became very clear in her mind. She could tell what was going for several square kilometers around her. She almost shouted out loud when she realized she had an all-around view of her surroundings. Spiritual power can be used in this way. Isn't he an evil soul master? However, I can't feel any evil aura from him now. On the contrary, there's a very thick aura of light. What's with this guy? Yi Gai followed Hu Yuhao tightly as the questions piled up in her mind. Through his spiritual detection, he told her to follow him closely. Very soon, the 3 of them got close to the troops, who were stationed to the west of Radiant City. Yi Gai started to get a little nervous. Although the 3 of them were very strong, they were still outnumbered. Furthermore, the Sun Moon Empire's military would still have some soul engineers, even if there was no real soul engineering team around. They were trying to make their way into Radiant City. If they were discovered, they would be surrounded. This guy doesn't seem like an idiot. Why is he doing something as foolish as this? However, she was shocked once again even before her doubts were answered. The soldiers didn't seem to notice them at all. They didn't react even though the 3 of them were getting closer and closer. In fact, the soldiers weren't able to see them at all. Hu Yuhao had used his imitation to hide from others on several occasions. It was even more effective at night. Unless one really tried to sense his aura, they wouldn't be able to detect him using the naked eye. In addition, only soul masters that were superior in cultivation to him and certain special soul beasts would be able to sense his aura while he was concealed this way. They were able to charge past the troops into Radiant City openly. Yi Gai stopped trying to guess what Hu Yuhao's abilities were shortly thereafter. It was because she was more astonished by the dilapidated buildings and walls in front of her. As she looked at several of the collapsed buildings in front of her, as well as the fishes on the ground that snaked around everywhere, Yi Gai couldn't help but exclaim, "Is this really Radiant City? Why has it become like this?" "Shut up." Hu Yuhao transmitted this message to her through his spiritual power. His imitation couldn't isolate sound. Is she trying to tell the troops where we are? Yi Gai also realized her mistake, but she was still dissatisfied as she snorted at Hu Yuhao. "Am I supposed to shut up just because you want me to?" While she was speaking again, she tried her best to lower her volume. Hu Yuhao didn't have time to bother with her. Right now, he could sense that Bei Bei and Shu Sansha were in a crisis. He quickened his footsteps and burst forward. He didn't choose to fly, because he understood soul tools very well. The aerial surveillance soul tools in the air had very simple structures, as they were very large, and yet needed to remain in the air. However, the anti-air soul tools on the ground were different. He couldn't hide from them even with his imitation. The anti-air soul tools were aided by soul power detection soul tools. No matter what, Wu Yuhao couldn't possibly conceal his soul power undulations completely. Once they were discovered, they couldn't possibly handle the barrage of attacks that would be unleashed against them. Bei Bei and Shu Sanxia were indeed in a disastrous situation right now. They had been surrounded by their enemies. A bunch of soul engineers that had them surrounded. These soul engineers weren't individually strong, the highest ranked among them was only a class 5 soul engineer. However, they had strength in numbers. At least 40 soul engineers had formed a loose circle, trapping the two of them. The soul tools that were used were mainly class 3 or class 4. However, they were mainly used for rapid and long-range attacks. There were many rapid-fire cannons and explosive bombs that were targeting Bei Bei and Shu Sanxia. They weren't given the opportunity to catch their breath. The fighting strength of soul engineers would greatly increase after they achieved a certain numerical advantage. That was what was happening with this bunch of soul engineers. They were from the Sun Moon Empire's Soul Engineering Legion, and had great chemistry with one another. The soul tools that they used only exhausted their soul power, and didn't drain any other resources. If Bei Bei and Shu Sanxia had been at their peak condition, they wouldn't find it a problem to fight their way out. However, the two of them were critically injured during the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Academy. Although they had received treatment in time, they were still far from fully recovered. After a series of fights, their injuries had relapsed. At this point, Shu Sanxia was using his shield of the Xuanwu turtle to protect Bei Bei. He tried to charge his way out a few times, but he was forced to retreat on every occasion. Furthermore, a flashing red light silently appeared in the sky at this point. This ball of light very quickly locked onto Shu Sanxia. It was an eye of fear. Even though they weren't soul engineers, Bei Bei and He Kai-Tu recognized what it was. During the tournament, He Kai-Tu used an eye of fear to create many opportunities for their team to beat their opponents. However, they were the ones who were going to suffer from the wrath of this eye of fear right now. It wasn't a good feeling to be on the wrong side this time. Bei Bei, I didn't expect to die with you here. I'll fight all the way with them. Later, try to break out on your own when I unleash my full abilities. I can't take care of her anymore. Ask her to find a good guy and marry him, Shu Sanxia said to Bei Bei without any hesitation. Bei Bei was flustered and exasperated as he said, "Nonsense. I don't think you can help me escape with your lacking abilities. I think you should get out of here. You're more likely to escape with that turtle shell you've got. I'm more explosive than you." In the face of this crisis, he was less refined than he normally was. Shu Sanxia was furious. Cut the crap. Anyway, Nan Nan has always nursed a grievance against me. She won't be too sad even if I die. You are different from me. You still have to save Xiao Ya. What will she do without you? Go on, get the hell out of here. That eye of fear is about to finish charging. As he spoke, he gave Bei Bei a forceful push. However, Bei Bei's body shone with blinding golden light at this point. A sonorous dragon roar reverberated through the 9 heavens. It was a sign that meant the radiant holy dragon was about to be unleashed. Bei Bei hadn't tapped into the abilities of his radiant holy dragon earlier, even though he was facing formidable enemies, due to his injuries. However, it was evident that he was going all out by unleashing it now. Shu Sanxi's eyes were red as he glared at Bei Bei. However, Bei Bei now appeared very calm and refined. He was smiling as he looked at Shu Sanxia. The golden bolts of lightning that surged around him started to gradually turn into a light fog. Everything within a region of several tens of square meters turned a blinding gold. In a matter of seconds, lightning flashed within this region, which seemed to have transformed into a special world. The golden glow around Bei Bei started to combust like flames. He was burning his life energy to increase the strength of his soul power. His radiant holy dragon was strong enough to increase his fighting strength significantly. By sacrificing his life energy, he made his fighting strength even more terrifying. Shu Sanxi's eyes had already turned red. He wanted to stop Bei Bei, but he was flung far away by a strong bolt of golden lightning. Bei Bei smiled as he waved at him. He pointed toward the west before pointing to the inside of Radiant City. After that, he waved to him again. Shu Sanxia had known him for years, and thus he naturally knew what Bei Bei was telling him. He was asking him to escape first, and save Tang Ya in the future. Shu Sanxia suddenly shouted hysterically, at the top of his voice as he glared at Bei Bei. Bei Bei, you homo. Now I know you truly love me. Bei Bei wanted to say something, but he chose to turn around and ignore him. At this point, the red light flashing from the eye of fear in the sky suddenly dimmed. A tragic scream sounded from afar, and a ball of bloody light shot into the sky. The bloody light, which was a mixture of red and white, scattered, and the eye of fear shook a little before it fell from the sky. The surrounding temperature started to fall significantly. Snowflakes started to drift in the air as the temperature dipped. The Seoul engineers didn't even have time to react before they realized that their bodies were starting to freeze. Shusansha was stunned. However, he was then delighted. He shouted at Bei Bei, "Little Junior is here. It's Little Junior. Homo, quickly retract your powers. I'll follow you if you dare to die." At this point, Shusansha couldn't help but tear up, even though he was normally a very proud and resilient person. "Yes. Hui Yuhao is here." At this moment, Hui Yuhao's expression was so cold that he seemed like a devil king from hell. Purplish gold light shot out from his eyes. The spiritual undulations he released were very pure. However, they also seemed to have materialized. It was like two sharp, purplish gold blades had shot out from his eyes. Hui Yuhao was extremely terrifying in such a state. The little snow lady had already silently appeared behind him. She clasped her hands, her index and ring fingers slightly bent. She formed a weird hand gesture, before a blizzard started to rage forth from her body. Yes, it was the snowy dance of ultimate ice, formed from a combination of the third ultimate technique of the Snow Empress, three ultimate techniques, the Empress Chill, and Hui Yuhao's domain of perpetual ice. The terrifying blizzard raged as Hui Yuhao charged his way in. When Bei Bei's began to burn his life force, Hui Yuhao almost went crazy. Bei Bei wasn't just his eldest senior, but also his elder brother. He was even a father figure to Hui Yuhao. No one could replace Bei Bei in his heart. Seeing that his eldest senior had been forced to such a state, Hui Yuhao went entirely bonkers. The bloody light that had scattered earlier was in fact the brain matter of a Class 7 Soul Engineer. He was also the one controlling the Eye of Fear. Hui Yuhao managed to locate him using his immense spiritual power. After his spiritual cultivation reached the concrete material realm, this was his first time unleashing his spiritual shock using his Eye of Destiny with all his strength. Although the individual fighting strength and spiritual power of a Class 7 Soul Engineer was inferior to that of a 7-ringed Soul Sage, they were still considered very powerful. However, this Class 7 Soul Engineer's head was instantly blown apart by Hui Yuhao's spiritual shock, just like that. The snowy dance of ultimate ice was unleashed using the Haodong power, and it immediately covered a 300-meter area. The rest of the Soul Engineers that had dispersed were all instantly engulfed by the blizzard. Hui Yuhao's eyes flashed with purplish gold light once again. Bei Bei groaned, and the golden lights around his body started to scatter. The golden flames on his body also went out. His eyes closed, and he collapsed to the ground. Once someone started to burn their life force, there was no way they could stop it themselves. Hui Yuhao had no choice but to strike him with his spiritual shock to stop him from burning more of his life force. With Bei Bei's cultivation and the combustion of his holy radiant dragon earlier, even an 8-ringed Soul Doluo couldn't possibly stop him. Hui Yuhao could only do so using his spiritual power. Even though Bei Bei was hurt, his life was still preserved. Hui Yuhao charged towards Bei Bei. Wang Donga mimicked a pressing action on Bei Bei's back, and the golden fire from her soul bone started to surround Bei Bei. He was temporarily shielded from the aura of ultimate ice as a result of this. "I'm freezing to death. Yuhao, I can't take it anymore." Shusanshi's tragic screams sounded from behind them. Hui Yuhao heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Bei Bei's life had been preserved. He quickly removed his domain and let go of Wang Donga's hand. He rushed to support Shusansha, who was staggering. Even though he was only in the snowy dance of ultimate ice for a short period of time, Shusansha had already turned pale. Although the origin energy of ultimate ice in Hui Yuhao's body had been bothering him, it had also enabled him to fully unleash the strength of his ultimate ice. At the same time, the little snow lady was slowly evolving. Although Hui Yuhao was still a Soul King, his fighting strength was increasing significantly. The biggest problem with the snowy dance of ultimate ice was its all-around, indiscriminate attack. At least, with Hui Yuhao's current abilities, he still couldn't control the strength of this domain effectively. He was unleashing the snowy dance of ultimate ice, not the fusion skill that both he and Wang Donga possessed. Hu Yuhao bent down and lifted Shusansha onto his back. He felt very fortunate right now. Fortunately, I created this human-shaped soul tool earlier. I'm getting some good use out of it now. If I hadn't made it, I wouldn't be able to save the two of them now. Hu Yuhao returned to Bei Bei's side after he lifted Shusansha up on his back. He used both his hands to carry Bei Bei and twisted his lips at Wang Donga before saying, "Let's go." Yi Gai was also shivering right now. When she saw the little snow lady appear, followed by the terrifying domain, she was completely speechless. She thought that Hu Yuhao was a freak. In addition, she could clearly see Hu Yuhao's soul rings experiencing changes as he unleashed his domain. 4 turned orange gold, while 1 turned red. Is he still a soul master? Is he even human? Hu Yuhao wasn't in a mood to comfort the shaken Yi Gai. Under Wang Donga's protection, he turned around and rushed westward. He unleashed his imitation again, distorting the light around them, and they vanished into their surroundings. "Get over here, quick. What are you doing?" Hu Yuhao shouted at Yi Gai. At this point, Yi Gai was quite some distance away from Hu Yuhao. Earlier, she had used her holy angel to resist the snowy dance of ultimate ice. She now watched as Hu Yuhao and the rest vanished before her eyes. She opened her eyes wide. He's actually able to cloak everyone. No wonder the troops couldn't discover us earlier. No wonder he wants me to stay within 10 meters of him. Under the guidance of Hu Yuhao's spiritual power, Yi Gai quickly rushed up to them. She shielded him from the side opposite Wang Donga as they charged westward. The aerial surveillance soul tools in the air had already discovered the tremendous changes that had happened on the ground. Deafening alarms started to ring out. Several figures appeared in the air after several seconds. The truly strong individuals of the Sun Moon Empire had arrived. However, their expressions changed when they saw the ice sculptures below. With the help of Wang Donga, Hu Yuhao's snowy dance of ultimate ice managed to reach the level of a soul sage. It was ultimate ice that was equivalent to the strength of a soul sage. How could those class 4 and 5 soul engineers possibly resist it? As a result, they lost their lives when they were frozen. Even their soul tools were covered in frost. "Where are they?" an elder asked a soul sage that was in charge of controlling the surveillance soul tools. "They are missing. Moja rushed here just now, but his head was blown apart by some special force." Moja was the soul sage who had controlled the Eye of Fear earlier. This soul engineer who controlled the surveillance soul tools was also a soul sage. Right now, he looked very dismal. His abilities were very similar to Moja's. If Moja couldn't resist that force, he wouldn't be able to do so either. If not for the fact that the elder was a class 8 soul engineer, he wouldn't dare to be here at all. Increase the detection range and use the soul power detectors. I don't believe they can escape. They must be using some ability to cloak themselves, the class 8 soul engineer shouted. The unsettled class 7 soul engineer nodded and immediately retrieved a huge soul tool from his storage type soul tool. He carried that soul tool on his back. It looked like a huge box. As he poured his soul power into it, intense soul power undulations started to rise. Following this, a thick metallic object started to rise from the box. After rising up 1.5 meters, the top of the box cracked open and formed an umbrella shape. A total of 7 metal frames around the metallic umbrella started to gather in the center towards a specific point. Soul power undulations were released, and the soul tool started to scan the ground around it. It was a class 6 soul power detector. It required the soul power of a 7-ringed soul sage to be used continuously over a large area. In addition, it couldn't be too far from the ground, so it was not to a high-altitude soul tool. However, just as he started activating this soul power detector, several bursts of sparks started to come from it. He and the other soul engineers around him were given a scare. They all looked down subconsciously. A terrifying, freezing tornado raged below them. Intense booms erupted in a circle and mixed with the icy mist that had just exploded before they merged into an enormous tornado that rocketed into the sky. This explosion was simply too frightening, as if the apocalyptic explosion that had just occurred in Radiant City was descending upon the city once more. Terrifying soul power undulations pushed the soul power detector to its limits, and it detonated with a protesting crack of metal. The soul engineers hurriedly soared into the sky, and even then, the extreme chill coming from beneath them made them shiver all over. This horrifying and tremendous explosion covered everything within 1,000 meters on the ground, and some structures that were still standing were instantly blown to smithereens. Fortunately, the soldiers and citizens in the region had already scattered, and not many lives were lost. However, this frightening explosion's force and impact was clearly similar to that of a titled Doluor's all-out attack. Hui Yuhao was meticulous and cautious. The more dangerous the situation, the calmer he was, and his judgments would still be accurate even if there were emotions stirring up his heart. Hui Yuhao had predicted that they would attract their enemy's attention when he hid with Bei Bei and Shusansha once more, and this was the reason why he opted to unleash his snowy dance of ultimate ice even though it would affect Shusansha at the same time. Otherwise, with the strength that he would have had if he had teamed up with Wang Donga to unleash mantra amidst the void, spiritual tempest, every single soul engineer on the scene would also have been eliminated. The soul engineers that had been frozen into ice statues became Hui Yuhao's timed explosive bombs for later, and his left hand was the most important entity that controlled these explosives and their detonations. Ice explosion was known as a godly skill of ultimate ice, and that claim wasn't without substance. With the proper prerequisites met, Hui Yuhao could become even more frightening than 7-ringed and 8-ringed soul masters in larger battles like this. This was the outcome even when Hui Yuhao didn't use his hands to activate ice explosion and detonate the soul power within these soul engineers' bodies directly. Otherwise, this explosion would have covered far more than just a kilometer. Its impact would probably have reached the various soul engineers in the sky. Hui Yuhao's face was cold and solemn as they soared through the air. He was carrying Bei Bei in his arms, Shusansha on his back, and his heart was full of peace and tranquility at this moment. Hui Yuhao didn't even look back when the deafening explosion erupted behind him. The huge army in front of them was shifting around, so Hui Yuhao and the others changed directions a little before they ran through the cracks between those soldiers, while Wang Donga and Yi Gai followed behind him. Bei Bei's breathing was weak, but his condition was stable, and all his vitals were normal. Shusanshi's breathing had become a lot more regular and normal after he took some time to rest and adjust himself. For some reason, Hui Yuhao suddenly thought of the White Tiger Duke's personal guards, who had jumped off the cliff for him before this. He suddenly understood why so many men chose to become soldiers, as only on the battlefield could they have that feeling where they were together in both life and in death, and only then could they feel the honor and glory of being valiant warriors. There had been a thought in his mind, and it was just a thought, but it grew and gestated like a seedling from the bottom of his heart. He had made up his mind. The three of them finally broke free from the Sun-Moon Empire's encirclement by zipping in between the gaps between the Sun-Moon Empire's army units with Hui Yuhao's imitation. Hui Yuhao's spiritual detection, which was shared with the others, and his imitation were the most important reasons why they could escape so easily. There were some flatlands in front of them, but Hui Yuhao chose to stop in his tracks at this moment. He frowned faintly, and turned towards Yi Gai with an awkward look on his face as he said, "Yi Gai, this place is considered safe for now. But if we continue towards the west, we will run into another kind of danger. We have to continue forward, but you don't have to. I can tell you everything about us now. I'm Hui Yuhao from Shrek Academy's inner courtyard, and she is Wang Donga. She's my girlfriend, and she's also from the inner courtyard. I don't have time to explain my abilities to you for now. You should know the Sun-Moon Empire's connection to the Holy Ghost Church, and you have also seen how powerful they are. There's no way for us to fight them by ourselves with our strength. If you are willing, you can join Shrek Academy. The Academy's doors will always be open to you, and your angel should be enough for the inner courtyard to make an exception to take you in." Wang Donga glanced at Hui Yuhao and gently touched his arm. Hui Yuhao had just introduced her to another pretty girl as his girlfriend, which proved how sweet he was to her. Yi Gai was taken aback when Hui Yuhao mentioned that he was from Shrek Academy. She knew of Shrek Academy, of course. As the #1 academy on the continent, there were probably not many who didn't know it. No wonder. No wonder he has so many strange abilities. He's actually from Shrek Academy. They hadn't known each other for very long, but for some reason, Yi Gai had an indescribable faith in Hui Yuhao, perhaps because Hui Yuhao had the chance to kill her a long time ago, but he didn't do it. "Let me think about it," Yi Gai answered with a subtle frown. Hui Yuhao nodded and said, "All right, I won't force you. But I believe that we will become allies in the future, since we share the same enemies." Shusansha was still conscious, and right at this moment, the plain voice that had already traumatized them a little rang out once more in their ears. "You have passed this deep adventure. The second test has been narrowly completed, so everyone can proceed to the third round sincerity adventure. You may return." 4 faint gold and silver beams of light rose up from their bodies at the same time. Yi Gai looked on with widened eyes and a slack jaw, as all 4 of them vanished right before her eyes in an instant. Her body also drifted out from under the influence of Hui Yuhao's imitation. Yi Gai patted herself on the forehead. Her mind was already numb, as Hui Yuhao had given her too many shocks and surprises, to the point where she had gotten used to it. Should I go to Shrek Academy? I'll think about that after I leave this place. I'll circle around since I can't travel to the west. Golden rays flashed by one after another as the virtual world that they were in reverted to reality. Hui Yuhao, Wang Donga, Bei Bei, and Shu Sansha appeared one after another in an entirely new environment. They seemed to be inside an enormous courtyard. The courtyard's boundaries couldn't be seen with the naked eye, and there was a golden sun and a silver moon hanging in the sky to show that they were still under the yin-yang love-querying valley's control. 4 gold and silver beams surged from beneath their feet. However, these rays of light were no longer arresting their strengths and abilities. Hui Yuhao could clearly feel that the soul power and spiritual power he had expended before this were being restored with incredible speed, and even the faint fatigue in his body vanished under the warm radiance. Bei Bei's reaction was the most conspicuous one. His body drifted away from Hui Yuhao's hands, and was gradually straightened while a dense mist nourished his body continuously. Hui Yuhao could tell at this point that everyone else who had disappeared before had reappeared in this place, except they didn't have mist around their bodies. Everyone was standing around in a circle, and everyone had a dome over them, as if they were trapped and couldn't leave. Everyone heaved deep sighs of relief as Hui Yuhao and the 3 others appeared before them, with the exception of Zhong Lishuan. Her pretty eyes flowed with worry and anxiety when she saw that Bei Bei was still unconscious. Shu Sansha was the first to recover from his weakened state. He realized to his surprise that not only had his body recovered, but the old injuries that he had sustained from the tournament had also been healed. The yin-yang love-querying valley did have its mysterious and miraculous characteristics. Bei Bei finally regained consciousness after a little while. He opened his eyes and saw everyone around him, and he understood that he had passed the previous test. He turned around towards Hui Yuhao and squinted at him. Bei Bei didn't seem like he had just returned from the edge of death at all, and his classic scholarly disposition and his faint, amiable smile returned to him once more. His eyes unintentionally met the anxious look in Zhong Lishuan's eyes, and his expression froze a little. However, his eyes only carried a little more awkwardness, as if everything had become a little more complicated. Congratulations on passing your second test. After this, you will proceed to the last test, Sincerity Adventure. If you can pass this test, you can leave, and you will be rewarded with something at my discretion. The Sincerity Adventure doesn't have any limits or boundaries to what it may entail. Some of you may find your task easy, while others may find theirs exceptionally difficult. Everyone will face a different test. You will begin now. The borderless golden courtyard began to tremble violently, as that strange and peculiar voice rang out once more. All kinds of scenery glimmered into view, and every single one that was either familiar or novel rotated back and forth in the sky. Every scene that flashed and flowed by would produce waves of intense suction force. Finally, golden beams landed on all 13 people in the courtyard. They had no chance to resist those light beams at all, and everyone was taken away by those golden beams, one after another, vanishing in the blink of an eye. Hui Yuhao closed his eyes. He sensed the space that was twisting and contorting around him, and it made him dizzy, but he tried his best to regain his composure as much as possible. Hui Yuhao had now had his first experience in actual war after 2 deep adventures, and both episodes gave him a whole new perspective on everything. These experiences would be valuable for his growth if he could safely exit the yin-yang love-querying valley. Suddenly, Hui Yuhao's body trembled, and he felt as if he were standing on solid ground once more. He knew from his past experiences that he had arrived at the location where he was supposed to face his third test. However, he was a little confused when he opened his eyes, because the environment he was standing in now appeared exactly the same as it was before this. He was still inside a boundless golden courtyard. The only difference was that there was someone standing roughly 10 meters away from him. This person was covered in faint bluish golden light, and Hui Yuhao couldn't see him clearly at all. Hui Yuhao's instincts told him that this person was a man. Part 1 end here.